evening. My name is Doug Harkness. I'll be your host tonight for the Provincial Dufferin-Caledon All Candidates debate. The forum was organized by the Dufferin Board of Trade with support from the Brampton Real Estate Board, the Canadian Federation of University Women Headwaters, the Dufferin Federation of Agriculture, and Rogers TV Orangeville. We would like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that Dufferin County resides within the traditional territory and ancestral lands of the Tiantonte, Atawandaron, Haudenosaunee, and Inishawnee peoples. We also acknowledge that various municipalities within the county of Dufferin reside within the treaty lands named after the Haldimand Deed of 1784 and two of the Williams Treaties of 1818. Treaty 18, the Nottawasaga Purchase, and Treaty 19, the Adjetons Treaty. These traditional territories upon which we live and learn are steeped in rich Indigenous history and traditions. It is with this statement that we declare to honor and respect the past and present connection of Indigenous peoples with this land, its waterways, and its resources. The Dufferin Board of Trade is a grassroots, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization with a passion for helping local business thrive. One of the key ways Dufferin Board of Trade does this is by being the voice of business in Dufferin and advocating on behalf of business needs. Tonight's event allows the public to meet the candidates and hear their views on important issues impacting life and work in Dufferin County. The questions asked tonight are from the 60+ questions received by the public through our website. A small committee reviewed all questions received and compiled a list to those to be asked tonight, covering as many different topics and interest areas as possible. Candidates were not informed of the questions prior to the event. Following the event, a short series of additional questions not asked due to time constraints will be forwarded to all candidates. Candidates' written responses will be posted on our website, www.dufferinbot.ca. All 8 Dufferin-Caledon candidates were invited to participate in the election forum tonight. 5 candidates accepted our invitation to participate. Candidate Lily Naiguin from the Ontario Party opted instead to provide a candidate's message, which will be aired immediately following the forum. Kay Sayer from the Public Benefit Party has declined our invitation, and Eric Umar Emmanuel did not respond to our many attempts to contact him. You may find links to all 8 parties on our website, as well as bios and contact details from candidates who chose to provide such. Tonight's forum will begin with each candidate's 3 minutes introduction. We will then move on to the questions, where candidates will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. Our candidates can view the countdown timer on the screen in front of the stage. The timer will begin after the moderator has asked the question and will give a 30-second warning and indicate when time is up. As the forum comes to a close, each candidate will have 2 minutes to give a closing statement. Candidates drew numbers on their way in a few minutes ago to determine tonight's speaking order. We will begin with candidate 1 and move down the line. For the second question, we will begin with candidate 2 and once again move down the line until each candidate has responded. We will repeat this process throughout the evening, and I will try my best to keep it straight. I will remind candidates that control of the floor rests with myself, and I ask for respect and cooperation in that regard. I will now introduce our first candidate to give their opening remarks, Laura Campbell from the Green Party of Ontario. Laura.
Thank you, Doug. And thank you to the Dufferin Board of Trade, as always, for organizing this, and to the Dufferin Federation of Agriculture and the Canadian Federation of University Women for their support for this event, and the Brampton Real Estate Board. Thank you. My name is Laura Campbell. I'm the Ontario Green candidate here in Dufferin-Caledon, and I'm running for the second time. I ran in 2018 as well. I'm a proud parent of 2 children, aged 6 and 8, and for the past 10 years, my husband and I have owned or continue to operate a small lunch restaurant in Orangeville. It's called Pia's on Broadway, and it's very connected to the local food movement, and we run that place with 3 wonderful, hardworking, full-time staff members that I appreciate so much, because they give me the time to do things like this. During my time doing Pia's with my husband, I also pursued studies in history. I've been a PhD student for a decade, studying history and politics and international relations, and it's really allowed me to analyze the moment we are in through a historical lens. We're really in what historians would call a watershed moment. The tide is turning. It's now or never to face the climate crisis head on. We can choose to keep doing things the way we've always done them, building sprawling suburbs onto precious farmland, or resigning people to soul-crushing hour-long commutes. We can seize this moment, though. We can build an economy based on the new climate economy, creating jobs of tomorrow in, industries that are already taking off. Ontario needs to be a leader in that field. And by doing that, we can create a prosperous Ontario once again, an Ontario that has the revenue to provide the key services that we need in our frontline care, whether it's hiring more nurses and doctors, giving a pay raise to the people that care for us, doubling the Ontario Disability Support Program, or just making sure we keep class sizes small. These are all investments we need to make. Ontario Greens are committed to making them. The plan that we have is a realistic plan. It is fully costed, and more Greens at Queen's Park means that we can advocate for the things that we all need. We have new solutions to old problems. We're interested in fixing the foundations of this province, and not just for the short term, but to put in place preventative measures so that we don't continue to face the same problems over and over again. I'm really proud to be a Green, and I hope you'll check out our platform online. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura. Next up, we have Andrea Banier from the New Blue Party. Andrea.
Hi, my name is Andrea Banier. I'm a resident of Mono, a former Torontonian, and was born and raised in what is now the county of Lakeshore. My mother was a nurse, and my father was an auto worker in Windsor. I come from a working class home, and I have worked very hard all of my life to become a successful business owner. Now, I am a concerned citizen who feels enough is enough with the way our government is being run. And so I have decided to run for MPP in our riding to bring responsibility, accountability, and transparency back to good governance. I am running with the New Blue Party of Ontario. New Blue is a new provincial party started by the former PC MPP for Cambridge, Belinda Karahalios, and her husband Jim, to challenge the current established parties who have proven they do not put the well-being of every citizen of this province as priority number one. New Blue is running a full slate of candidates in every riding in Ontario. We are business owners, nurses, doctors, teachers, police officers, engineers, farmers, firefighters, paramedics. We are people from all walks of life. And as you can see, most of our candidates have worked frontline jobs throughout this pandemic. We are the ones who saw what really happened, and it was not what you have been told. We are here to speak the truth, to stand up for what is right, and to bring real solutions based on real experience and logic. It goes without saying, we have all been greatly affected by COVID mandates and passports. People have lost their jobs. Small businesses like mine were forced to lay off all our employees, or worse, shut down for good. Farmers are struggling with rising logistics costs. We're all struggling with rising gas prices, and everyone is concerned with inflation and the cost of living. These are self-inflicted issues by our government, both the previous Liberals and the current PC government. There were many mistakes made during this pandemic, but more importantly, there was ineffective leadership. And as a result, treatments for COVID were suppressed and ignored. Healthcare workers were forced to work tirelessly. Many did overtime for many months, being exposed to the virus over and over, and then terminated a year later for completely ignorant and unscientific reasons, just as the province faced the greatest nursing shortage we've ever seen. We are not on the brink of a crisis. We are in the middle of a crisis. We desperately need leaders who offer solutions, not empty promises to win your votes. The leader of New Blue and our party platform, the New Blueprint, offers solutions that address healthcare, education, political corruption, and the cost of living immediately. We will remove the mandates, hire back the healthcare workers, get rid of the carbon tax, drop the HST to 10%, cut hydro rates by canceling bad energy deals, and provide tax credits for alternative education, and so much more. If I'm elected as your MPP for Dufferin-Caledon, I will be the voice these communities need to take action on solutions.
Thank you, Andrea. Next up, we have Tess Prendergast from the Ontario NDP Party. Tess.
Hi, thank you. And thank you everyone for tuning in tonight. I'm a mother, an educator, a hard worker, and a proud Ontarian. I'm a voice for environmental and social change. I am your I am your MPP candidate for the New Democratic Party. I was born and raised in Scarborough, the daughter of a nurse and an elementary school custodian, and I know the value of hard work. My husband Ryan and I married and moved to Orangeville in 2011. I'm a French teacher and a librarian at an Orangeville school, which my children attend to, so I'm very much an active member of my local community. I'm also a scout leader, which is one of my true passions in life. As an elementary school teacher, I've witnessed firsthand the devastating cuts of the Ford government. Schools are overcrowded, they're underfunded, they're understaffed, and frankly, they're falling apart. This pandemic has exposed the dire need for meaningful investments in education, healthcare, long-term care, home care, mental health, and affordability. I am running to ensure Ontarians have access to strong public services like education and healthcare, and affordable housing. The NDP will bring mental health, pharmacare, and dental care into OHIP. We will hire nurses and PSWs. We'll repeal the oppressive Bill 124. We will help students close their gaps in learning and address the mental health crisis that is affecting our youth. We will reduce class sizes. We will double the ODSP rate in our second year. We will deliver province-wide high-speed internet on or before 2025. We want to build a better Ontario for the people that live here. We want people to thrive, and we know that's how our province will get stronger. Education, healthcare, social services, and the environment all play a big role in supporting healthy communities. We believe in a government that works for and listens to its constituents. We believe in an Ontario that supports workers and families. As Ontarians, we have a duty to protect the Greenbelt, protect our farmland, and to develop sustainably with economic growth in mind. The towns, farms, and communities of Dufferin-Caledon deserve fair representation, a true voice in Queen's Park. I've been teaching, living, growing my family here in Dufferin for 10 years, and I'm proud to live here, and I want Dufferin to stay proud and true to its historical roots. I'm ready to stand up and speak up for everyday people. I'm so excited to represent our community for the NDP, and I hope you take a look at our great platform, which is fully costed and has great ideas for everyday people. Thanks for coming, and I can't wait to share more with you.
Thank you, Tess. Next up, we have Bob Gordonier from the Ontario Liberal Party. Bob.
Thanks very much, Doug. And good evening, everybody. My name is Bob Gordonier. I'm the Ontario Liberal candidate for Dufferin-Caledon. I'm a father, a grandfather, a farmer, firefighter, and an ex-police officer, all retired, of course. I have been a public servant for about 40 years through Beef Farmers of Ontario and other agricultural organizations. We have farmed in this area of Dufferin-Caledon for 40 years. My family has grown up here, and I have still 3 children living here adult children living here in Orangeville and 1 in Northern Ontario. I'm very passionate at what I do, or I wouldn't be here tonight. We've seen the cuts that have happened over the last years with the Ford government, and we're really tired of seeing it. We cannot run on cuts. We cannot cut education. To me, education is the key to our children's success, and we need to have the tools given to the educators to teach. The same as the hospitals. We cannot run hospitals with nobody working inside it. It's a very nice building, but a lot of people are just totally wore out. And of course, it's all built 124 has already been mentioned. I've spent years in the agricultural industry with Beef Farmers of Ontario, the president, and also on the executive of the Canadian Cattlemen. And we see our riding going downhill. We're losing precious land. Like, for example, the Highway 413 that is proposed by the Conservative government. It will break up 2,000 acres of farmland and another 2,000 acres of farmland and another 2,000 acres of just forest and brush lands and whatever. And to me, to spend $10 billion on a highway that goes nowhere is madness. There's lots of places we can put this. We have already said we would go to education, building schools, and also renovating schools. I'm very passionate at saving farmland. We cannot grow anything once it's got houses and asphalt on it. Also, climate crisis, another very large problem in our area, and actually not our area, I should say, all over the world. But it seems that Caledon is having a real hard time with climate crisis and also aggregate pits.
Thank you, Bob. Next up, we have Sylvia Jones from the PC Party of Ontario. Sylvia.
Thank you. My name is Sylvia Jones. I'm your Progressive Conservative candidate here in Dufferin-Caledon. I am currently your member of Provincial Parliament, as well as serving on Doug Ford's cabinet as Ontario's Solicitor General. I'm asking for your vote because I want to continue investing in our economy by rebuilding Ontario's economy. In the last 4 years, we've seen 550,000 new jobs created in Ontario, with recent investments announced in our auto sector, including Canada's first electric vehicle battery plant being built right here in Ontario. I'm asking for your vote because I want to continue working for workers by encouraging people to consider skilled trades as a career choice. Stable, plentiful, well-paying jobs are waiting for people who want to work in the skilled trades. We've all seen the help wanted signs. Let's train people for these opportunities. I'm asking for your vote so we can plan for the future and get infrastructure built so we can get our goods and people where they need to be. Building homes so our children can afford to live in the community they choose. Building a new school in Caledon East, as well as expanding Highland Heights Elementary in Shelburne to make sure that our children can go to school in the community they live, not be bused tens of kilometers away. I'm asking for your vote so we can tackle the rising costs of gas and groceries. Our government has already eliminated the cost of license plate stickers, saving families $120 per year per car. And on July 1st, we will be cutting the provincial gas tax by 5.7 cents per litre. And finally, I'm asking for your vote because we have a plan to safely stay open and be ready when our loved ones need a long-term care home or home bed or hospital. Recent investments include 13 additional beds at the Headwaters Healthcare Centre. We've announced new and expanded long-term care facilities in Orangeville and Shelburne, as well as partnering with our federal and municipal governments to fix bridges and roads, improve community centres and recreational centres, and expanding trails across Dufferin-Caledon. We saw what happens when previous governments ignored our changing demographics and wouldn't plan for the future. Healthcare professionals had to work through a pandemic in facilities beyond capacity. Under the leadership of Doug Ford, investments are happening now to make sure we are prepared by training and hiring 27,000 additional doctors, nurses, and personal support workers. On June 2nd, I'm ready to once again represent you at Queen's Park and the people of Dufferin-Caledon. Please vote for me, Sylvia Jones.
Thank you, Sylvia. We'll move over to the questions now for the candidates. Laura Campbell, we'll start with you for the first one. If elected, what would you do to address the housing crisis in the community?
Yeah, certainly the housing crisis is something that all parties have been talking about for a long time. 2 years ago, Ontario Green started working on our housing paper. And what we've recognized is that previous governments have given us two options, either sprawling suburbs or high-rises. And so the problem with that is we can't continue to pave over farmland with urban sprawl and suburbia. And high-rise buildings don't make much sense in communities in Dufferin-Caledon. We need some missing middle housing. So the ways in which we can do that is to make those investments and to support municipalities to put in place infill development that we refer to as gentle density. So duplex duplexes, triplexes, nanny suites, garden suites, all kinds of housing that we can actually afford. And when I'm out knocking on doors, which has been a while now, I'm hearing of folks just wanting those options. They might say, well, I want to retire. I can't afford to downsize. I can't afford to leave my home because nothing else around here, whatever I get for my home, I can't buy a different house because they're all so expensive. So the option might be to have a family member or move into the main house, and then there could be a nanny suite. That's just an example. That's the kind of innovative solutions that we need to prioritize, and we're just not seeing that. Sprawl has been an affliction in this province for decades, and we do have proposals from the PC government around building a bunch of new homes, but what we're seeing, I'm a person in their 30s, we can't afford houses that are $800,000 to $900,000, and so we need to make sure that we're getting homes that are actually affordable, and Greens have prioritized that.
Thank you, Laura. Next up, we have Andrea Banier from the Ontario New Blue Party. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Sure.
Okay. If elected, what would you do to address the housing crisis in the community?
Okay, well, first of all, I understand that there is a major problem with the housing crisis. Myself, I've been looking for a house for 2.5 months. I've been knocking on doors and talking to everyone from millennials to seniors who can't figure out what they're going to do next in life. And I've been following this for many months before that, trying to figure out, what is the major problem here. And I just wanted to talk a little bit more about that. Laura mentioned sprawl. This happens because developers, the large developers, are the ones usually that come up with these plans. And what people don't understand is that municipalities, they can't just build roads on their own. And it's the large developers that have to come up with these plans that include the infrastructure development. So we are a new conservative party, so we do believe in development. We do want to encourage development, but we need to remove the red tape for smaller developers to come into the picture to be able to build new, innovative, creative ways for people to live. For example, I've been talking to people my age in their early 30s, late 20s, that want to live in what's called modern trailer park communities, let's say, where there's communes where you can share, your gardens. And these things are not possible with the way that our province allows, for example, NZOs and large developers to come in and just basically dictate how housing is going to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Next up, we have Tess Prendergast from the Ontario NDP Party. Tess.
All right. Thank you. We believe that housing is a human right, and every Ontarian is entitled to have a safe place to call home. Recently, I was listening to a Dufferin County regional meeting, and they said that over 700 families had requested supports for affordable housing. To me, that says there are 700 families on the brink of homelessness. It's a very precarious situation where we live in a rural setting where access to rental homes and supply, it just doesn't exist. The Ontario NDP is planning on building 1.5 million new homes over the next decade. We will end exclusionary zoning, which will provide for that missing middle that Laura referenced. So triplexes, granny flats, places that are attractive to people who are just starting out, like millennials, or our seniors who'd like to downsize into something smaller. And we plan on doing this within the existing urban boundaries, so we won't have unmitigated sprawl. We're also planning on creating a new public agency, Housing Ontario, to build over 250,000, new affordable and non-market homes, which people can rent. And we will bring back rent control, so you will pay what the last tenant paid. That's really important to keep people in their affordable homes. Right now, rent is very high. Many families earning just above minimum wage are not able to afford rent and groceries and medication and other necessities of everyday life. We will help over 311,000 households pay the rent with a portable housing benefit. And we'll do this by closing the capital gain loopholes, which will give us $1.7 million annually to create those 250,000 new homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Tess. Next up, we have Bob Gordonier from the Ontario Liberal Party. Bob.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, as we know, since the Ford government formed government here 4 years ago, they promised to keep the rent control. And of course, that went by the wayside. We've been knocking on a lot of doors and it doesn't matter whether you're in the south of the riding or right up in the north, it's the same complaint about the rents have gone up. Some people are paying as much as $500 and $600 a month more than they were because there is no rent controls. And of course, the houses in this area have gone up probably 500,000 depending on what you're looking at. So the Liberal Party said that they would build 1.5 million homes and bring back rent controls. Young people and newcomers and families need to get into the housing market. I can go back quite a few years. I took architecture at one time, and my thesis was affordable housing. Now, I won't tell you how many years ago that was, but it's quite a while ago. And nothing, it sounds like I'm insulting people here because there has been things done, but there hasn't been really nothing done. Nothing's changed in 50 years. And I believe it's because, and we can blame all governments here, nobody has really tackled this project. So we want to do that with the 1.5 million homes built. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Sylvia Jones from the PC Party of Ontario, your turn.
Thank you. I'm actually really pleased that this is the first question that is being raised this evening because it absolutely is something that we are all hearing from our residents. Whether it is that young person who is looking to enter the housing market for the first time or the senior who wants to downside but doesn't want to leave their family, their faith, their friends. So we want to have those options, and I can say that we have already started making changes as a provincial government, working with our municipal partners, working with home builders, working with organizations like Habitat for Humanity. We have, in fact, already put in some policy changes that have made a true difference. So, last year, there were 100,000 new homes built in the province of Ontario. That is the highest that we have seen in 30 years. The policies that we are putting in place are making a difference. Right here in Orangeville, we are seeing rental properties being built. I can't remember the last time we had rental properties being built in our community. So having those options is really important, and having policies and working with, whether it's the federal government, the municipal governments, or the builders, the trades who actually do the work, is really important to make this piece work together. As I said, I'm just really pleased that this is the first question that has been raised, because in the many years that I have served as your member of provincial parliament, this by far comes to the top of the interest in discussion with people at the door and on the phones. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. I'm really pleased that we started off with a bricks and mortar question as well. Andrea Banier from the New Blue Party, you'll be up first for our next question. Okay. So, guaranteed basic income is the system most people are referring to when they talk about basic income in Canada. It is an income contingent system, meaning monthly payments only go to families and individuals with lower income. Ontario introduced a basic income pilot project in 2017. Close to 4,000 people were enrolled, and it was supposed to last 3 years, but was cancelled early following the election of Doug Ford's Progressive Conservative government. If elected, will you and your party support a guaranteed basic income for the province's lowest income earners?
Thank you for the question. I'm just going to be honest that I do not know my party's position on this, but personally, I feel that universal basic income or any type of bill that relates to that name will not be great for the future of us in Ontario or for Canada. Personally, I feel like it's a slippery slope to socialism, and we live in a democracy, and we should be focusing on fixing the cost of living for everybody instead of just handing out more money. And there's easy ways to fix the cost of living. We can bring down taxes. We can fix the bad deals that have been going on in government. Our party also is committed to fixing political corruption. There's something called a taxpayer subsidy, which all of the political parties currently get a subsidy from taxpayers for running their elections. And this is something that our party is committed to getting rid of. For this election alone, it's costing taxpayers almost $14 million. And over 10 years, it has costed $100 million of taxpayer money. And that's something that we are willing to cut. And I just think that there are other ways that we can solve the problem instead of handing out more free money. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Next up, we have Tess Prendergast from the Ontario NDP Party. Tess.
Hi, thank you for the question about basic income. Our party supports renewing the trial of basic income in the cities that were already participating prior to the cutbacks on the basic income project. We are committed to supporting the most vulnerable people in our communities. We're committed to supporting them through rent help, through creating affordable homes and supportive homes, through doubling the ODSP rate and OW rates by the second year, by providing pharmacare, dental care, and mental health supports through OHIP, all alleviating these costs that can contribute to thousands of dollars for families every year. So we are committed to supporting vulnerable people in our communities, and we'll take another look at the basic income pilot. Thank you.
Thank you, Tess. Bob Gordonier from the Ontario Liberal Party, you're up.
Thank you. So this is another program that Mr. Ford canceled. And I think the trial was going very well. I would like to see, the answer to that is yes, I would support it. And go back to having a trial and finish it and see just where we are. I think basic income is very important. We have a lot of people out there that are hurting very badly, and I think we need to see just how we can help them. And maybe this is, or maybe this isn't the way to help them, but I think we need to finish the program.
Thank you, Bob. Sylvia Jones from the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario, it's your turn.
Thanks, Doug. So, instead of doing a pilot in 3 small communities, we have focused on making affordability a priority for our government. I've already talked about how in the last 4 years we have seen 550,000 new jobs created in the province of Ontario. And I hope you notice that I don't say the government started those new jobs. We put in the policies in place so that job creators, businesses created those new jobs. We've been encouraging skilled trades as a viable option for young people who are considering employment, because we know that the jobs are there, they're into the future, they're there. We are going to need those skilled trades to build those homes that we all talk about, to build the infrastructure, the schools, the hospitals. So we're encouraging the skilled trades. And of course, with the affordability piece, it's really important, and frankly, it's hit everyone. All homes are impacted when we see that $1.99 gas is a good price now. So having a focus on removing the license plate stickers, that's saving all families $120 per car per year. Having a break in the provincial sales tax at the gas of 5.7 per litre means that everybody can benefit. There is no doubt that housing, groceries, gas are on the rise, and we have to have policies in place that benefit all of Ontario, not targeted areas, and hope that it works in 2 or 3 years. We don't have the time to watch and see that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Laura Campbell from the Green Party of Ontario, over to you.
Yeah, I think a Or guaranteed income is a really innovative way to give folks income support when our economies are stagnating. I was really disappointed to see that pilot project canceled because I know that it was helping individuals. That being said, Ontario Greens want to start by doubling the Ontario Disability Support Program. And respectfully, on the license plate sticker piece, we are giving those refunds to people who might have 1, 2, 3 cars. People who have a lot of cars probably don't have a huge affordability crisis, but what that did was it took $1.1 billion out of Ontario's budget every year, which of course contributes to our deficit, but that's money that could have gone to supporting people who are living in poverty, and those people are on ODSP. And let's be real here, we are giving less money to folks who are in precarious positions and are living with a disability than we were in 1995. They don't even have enough money to pay for an apartment. So instead of, giving money back for license plate stickers, we could be using that money to support people, support them with their rent, with groceries, and maybe figuring out a way to get into a new type of job where they can do that from home if they can't travel. So I fully support helping people with income, and I would love to get to a pathway where we do have a basic income guarantee so that people can get into the careers they want to get into, in particular if they don't have wealthy families supporting them. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Tess Prendergast from the Ontario NDP party will have the first crack at the next question. So Tess, what is your party's position on residential development and the role of intensification as it affects the affordability of housing and farmland preservation?
Okay. Well, we fully support ending exclusionary zoning, so that would enhance intensification within existing urban boundaries. So that means building where there's already infrastructure in place, where you have waste management, roads are already there, public transit, facilities and services for newcomers to Canada, things that people will need when they might move to a new area, things that Caledon and Dufferin don't necessarily have yet. And then these things become big burdens on the municipal tax base, which is an issue with sprawl. Going back to the question, we would try to build those missing middle homes, which we referenced earlier, duplexes, triplexes, granny flats, places that people can feel part of the community. Recently, I went down to Southfields and Caledon, and that felt like a really good fit for the missing middle homes. There were all types of developments, multi-generational families living and thriving together in a community with a giant, vibrant community center in the middle, businesses, people walking in the neighborhood, and that serves as a perfect example of what good community planning can be, and we have it right here in Caledon. Giant mansions in sprawl along the corridor of the 413 is not good urban planning, and it's not good for Caledon. So yes, the NDP supports ending exclusionary zoning and focusing on intensification in existing urban areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Tess. Next up, we have Bob Gordonier from the Liberal Party of Ontario.
Thanks very much. Well, I think if we look around in our municipalities throughout Ontario, there's a lot of places that new affordable homes could be built without going on to farmland. Now, you know as well as I do that they can't build 600 houses, these developers, and that's what they like to build is big numbers. But there's all kinds of lots that are available. They're already, they have sewage, some have water. I believe that we could do a lot of work with affordable homes in that area. So to me, we don't need municipalities, for example, actually some municipalities are actually using the developers' planners. Now, that sounds a little ridiculous to me, simply because I'm not so sure that they're building what we really need, and we need affordable housing, and you don't see any of it around here. So we need to get and make some changes to the zoning bylaws and get on with affordable houses. And, you know, we can build all kinds of houses, but it just seems to me that nobody wants to build a small house anymore. They all want a big house. Well, a big house costs a lot of money. So let's maybe downsize and build some smaller homes that are affordable to newcomers and new people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Next up, we have Sylvia Jones from the PC Party of Ontario. Sylvia.
Thank you. You know, we began this debate talking about how housing supply was a real problem that we are all hearing at the doors and on the phones. So do I support building homes in Dufferin-Caledon and across Ontario? Absolutely, 100% I do. Am I proud of the fact that we have seen in the last year 100,000 homes built, the highest number in 30 years? Yes, I am. Why? Because people need a place to live and they are looking for those opportunities. 2 days ago, I was in Bolton, and there is a beautiful infill that is happening in the town of Bolton that talks about exactly what we need to see. You know, we often talk about sprawl. I want to reinforce with people that, do you understand over 80% of the town of Caledon is protected from all forms of development? So as a result of the Niagara Escarpment Commission, the Oak Ridges Moraine, the various conservation authorities, the Greenbelt, over 80% of the town of Caledon is protected from all forms of development. So when we see people talking about the need for other forms of housing options for their older seniors who want to get away from the maintenance of cutting grass and clearing their driveways in the winter, we need to have those. And so as we build, we will have people able to make choices to be able to live in the community that they've raised their children, that they have their friends, their family, and their faith organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Next up, we have Laura Campbell from the Green Party of Ontario. Laura.
This is really important to Greens. We want to prioritize housing and not highways. And the big piece of that is making sure that we build within existing urban boundaries. And, you know, despite what the legacy parties are telling us, we can actually develop housing without destroying farmland and wetlands. And actually, we do that not by using ministerial zoning orders, which, you know, we're talking about how lots of land in our riding is protected, but we've seen more ministerial zoning orders used by this particular government to override local plans and protections than we have, I think, in the last 50 years. So I think we just have to be really careful around talking about where we're going to build, because once you pave over farmland, we will never get that resource back. So this is why we want to build what we call 15-minute communities close to where people work. So infill development is going to be a key piece of that. And we've already talked about the missing middle housing, triplexes, duplexes, quadplexes, and all of that. And to make sure that we have that density so that we have the business case for transit. Because we don't have the best transit systems in Ontario, and there's no real reason why we shouldn't have that. And the excuse that's always given is like, well, we just don't have the density to justify it. Well, let's get that density in the GTA so that we can have the business case for high quality transit, so that people don't have to sit on highways, sit in traffic, and lose, I think the average is 7 years of your life if you're a commuter sitting in a car. So we have to redesign Southern Ontario and make it affordable for people, and we do that by building missing middle housing within urban boundaries and not approving plans to pave over farmland. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Next up, we have Andrea Banier from the New Blue Party. Andrea.
There are some good points made here. I do agree that we have a supply issue and we do need to build more housing, but we have to be responsible about it. We can't be building homes on wetlands. Anybody who understands how the environment works will know that it's going to eventually cause flooding in the future for all communities, and that's irreversible. So we need to remove the red tape. We need to start talking to municipalities more and figuring out what the problem is to actually get more developments happening. And I agree with some of these points, and thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. I just want to reiterate, I didn't have anything to do with these questions, but as someone involved in the residential construction industry, I'm really pleased to see two of the first three talking about that. Our next question, Bob Gordonier, you'll have the first opportunity to answer. The Ontario Economic Report 2022 found over 60% of businesses are experiencing labor shortages and expect to continue to face them over the next year. How do you plan to address these long-standing shortages that have been worsened by the pandemic? What are your plans to support the workforce of the future?
Well, that's a very good question. There's no doubt that training and education is a big part of this, and it has to go right back to the high schools, I believe, whether it be technical trades or what have you. I believe that's the start of the whole program, and it would get a lot of people. We were talking to students. In fact, we have a few students helping us, and it's really great to listen to what they have to say, because they don't think that there's enough of this in high schools and actually want this. So trades, I believe, are a big part of this. There's all kinds of work out there. And like somebody just said here this evening, that the amount of signs that are out in the industrial areas for help, the list goes on and on. So I believe trades is the way to go.
Thank you, Bob. Next up, Sylvia Jones from the Ontario PC Party.
Yeah, thank you. So as you noticed, I hope I did raise this as a priority for our government in my opening statements, focusing on skilled trades. We need those people to be able to be part of our economy, because we see how many jobs and opportunities there are. The fact that Premier Ford has received endorsements from LAUNA, from the Boilermakers, from the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, speaks to the fact that he understands the value and importance of promoting skilled trades. We can talk about second career options, but why aren't we talking to students while they're in grade 9, 10, 11, 12 and say, have you considered, have you explored this as an option? I know our local home builders has for years hosted events at high schools to highlight the career opportunities that are available in this industry, an industry that continues to grow, that continues to have great opportunities. And if you want to live, work, and raise your family locally, then skilled trades is a wonderful opportunity. It's why we focused on it as a government, and it's why we will continue to focus on it. We know the job opportunities are there, and we know that there are young people who would benefit so much from having those opportunities and trying out skilled trades. It's unfortunate that some of our high schools no longer have those pathways through the education system, but we'll continue to work with industry and make sure that people understand where the opportunities are. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Next up, we have Laura Campbell from the Ontario Green Party.
As a small business owner, I can tell you firsthand what the labor shortage is like. It is very hard. I have a lot of colleagues in the small business industry. We've spoken at length about some of the challenges that are actually a key piece of the labor shortage. It's not even that the workers aren't there, it's that they don't live in the communities where the jobs are. They can't actually afford apartments or houses or, the commute to the job that they want. So addressing affordable housing is going to be a key piece of making our communities connected, livable, and affordable, so that workers can live in the communities where they actually work. I think affordable housing is a key piece of, addressing the labor shortage. Also, I think, encouraging students to look at alternative careers in the trades is hugely important as we take advantage of the new climate economy. So one of the ways in which we can do that is to make sure that students from all walks of life can afford an education in the trades. And so Ontario Greens are really interested in making sure that loans are converted into grants for folks who can't afford tuition, for especially specialized education in perhaps the new clean economy. So 100% we need to be making sure that we connect these students and the graduates with the employers, but we also need to make sure that the community in which those employers operate are able to actually host them. And I know that all kinds of businesses that, are well paying, the affordable housing crisis is just so intense that even a good wage isn't going to be enough. Personal support workers are a great example of that. They do not make enough to even live close to the places that they work.
Thank you, Laura. Next up, we have Andrea Banier from the New Blue Party.
I'm just going to talk about the elephant in the room here. There are a lot of people that are out of work still because they are unvaccinated. And as much as we are trying to ignore this question in society of is anyone going to hire back these healthcare workers, the public service workers, the private sector workers where there's mandates in place, we need to get rid of the mandates, and we need to make sure a government in power is not just getting rid of these mandates, but not bringing them back in the future. And it's, this is one that hits home to me because I have a lot of friends. I've talked to a lot of people over the last couple months that their lives, their career, their future has been destroyed. And they're sitting at home, not working, while we have a nurse shortage. The last I heard, there was 30,000 nurses that the province is looking for. So why not hire back these healthcare workers, paramedics? So many different professions out there, people just sitting at home and waiting till these mandates are gone. And I want to bring up the point that I looked on Public Health this morning and I saw that the new recommendation for vaccines is now 3 doses. Now, I don't know what that's going to mean in the future. Nobody knows what that's going to mean in the future, but I'm here to bring up this point that there are many people ready and willing to come back to work if we can just move forward and get rid of these mandates and passports. The other thing that I want to mention is, as a small business owner also, I had to sell one of my businesses because of what happened with the pandemic. And I know many friends of mine that are entrepreneurs and also other business owners that do not trust the way that the future is going in both our province and the country, and they left. And the more that this continues to go on, the more we're going to see entrepreneurs leave the country, and we need to fix this. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Next up, we have Tess Prendergast from the Ontario NDP Party. Tess.
Hi, thank you. We have a couple of ways, the NDP has a couple of ways to attract new workers and help workers that are already here in Canada to develop their skills and credentials to get certification here through internationally educated worker programs. There are over 15,000 internationally educated nurses here in Ontario that are just looking for relative experience here in clinics and have that honored. And that's something that the NDP is prepared to do. There are also physicians that are internationally trained who just need experience in Ontario. And that's something we can expedite and facilitate. Another thing, too, is the possibility of rent geared to income in towns like Orangeville, where we've seen the price of a townhouse in the last year raised by 50%. So the reality is people who are earning a $15 minimum wage or just above minimum wage can't afford to live in this community anymore. It's no longer a middle-class community. It is an elite community which can't support customer service workers. And that's unfortunate but true. And Laura mentioned that with her own small business. People are experiencing difficulties. I spoke to a farmer who's finding it impossible to find people to work on his farm. And I agree with Sylvia. I took shop class when I was in grade 7. Then Mike Harris came in and cut shop class, cut home economics. And that was a Conservative government. I'm a teacher, and we do not see funding for these kinds of programs. And would high school students really benefit from exposure to trades? Yes, they would. They're starving for it. And we need to see that kind of investment in our children, in our youth, so we can fortify the workforce for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Tess. Skilled trades are very close to the heart of the Dufferin Board of Trade, and we're hosting an event this fall that will hopefully expose local high school students to the trade. So regardless of the outcome of the election, I hope to see you all out there. Our fifth question will go to Sylvia Jones first. Will you and your party support a climate crisis action plan with specific projects and targets, yes or no, if elected? What are the first 3 actions you would take to lower greenhouse gas emissions in this riding?
Thank you. Well, in fact, we've already started. So I've talked about recent investments in the auto sector. Stellantis has made an announcement that means in Brampton and in Windsor, Ontario will be the first in Canada to manufacture electric batteries for vehicles. In GM, in Oshawa and Ingersoll, are making electric commercial vehicles. They've made that announcement. They are retooling those plants. That is happening today. Honda in Alliston has committed to building hybrid vehicles and hybrid cars. Again, a retooling that is happening right now, today, and on their way. Working with Dufferin-Caledon in Hamilton, we, with a small investment from the provincial government and the federal government and a commitment from Dufferin-Caledon, they will reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 3 million tons. So you talk about what can we do? We can do those kinds of investments, work with job creators to make sure that as we move to more electric vehicles, more hybrid vehicles, we're manufacturing them here, we're using Ontario workers, and we're using the base minerals from this province. Instead of having to rely on foreign nationals, we have those rare earth minerals here in the province of Ontario and Northern Ontario, and we're getting it done. We're getting it done by building the Ring of Fire to make sure that the mining that is happening occurs here in Ontario, in Canada, and we don't rely on other countries to make sure that we have that happening here in the province of Ontario. And I must say, gridlock causes climate problems. So when we solve gridlock, we actually help and make sure that the idling is eliminated or decreased in our roads and highways, and that also assists.
Thank you, Sylvia. Laura Campbell from the Green Party of Ontario, over to you.
Ontario Greens do not believe that building more highways is going to get us out of the climate crisis. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I'm happy to hear the PCs are finally understanding that there is a huge economic opportunity in clean green energy. That was not the case 4 years ago when renewable energy contracts were ripped up and, electric vehicles were not considered to even be a priority for this government until recently. So I'm happy it's on the table now. That being said, these aren't real serious plans. They're not addressing the big elephant in the room. It's that this crisis needs a very bold plan. Ontario Green's climate plan aims to be net zero by 2045. And not just by saying, oh, well, we've got all these trees, we can use those as offsets, and we have all these wetlands, we can use that as offsets. No, we need to actually reduce the amount of fossil fuels we're burning in Ontario. So we need to make sure we're greening our electricity grid and moving away from gas plants to get our electricity. We need to make sure we're building electrified transit and transportation to make sure we're moving people efficiently and sustainably. And we need to make sure we're protecting nature. So yeah, we're crushing climate pollution. We're going to protect nature. We're going to set aside, make sure that land is protected. And we're also going to make sure that we succeed together. And this is why we have to seize on the new climate economy and support workers in that industry and move forward with a plan that gets us to real reductions in emissions, not just ad hoc plans here and there. It's going to require a big investment, but I think the payoff will be really great for this province and the country. Thanks.
Thank you, Laura. Next up, we have Andrea Banier from the New Blue Party.
Hi, I'd like to take this moment to just touch on what Sylvia Jones said about mining the Hudson Bay wetlands for the minerals you needed to build electric cars. My question is, do you realize that these wetlands contain the largest carbon stores in basically the planet? There's 35 billion tons of carbon in the Hudson Bay wetlands, called the Ring of Fire. So to me, it's pretty ironic to mine the Hudson Bay wetlands for these rare earth minerals that are needed to build the batteries in electric cars. And really, I tried to look for this answer online, and I'd like to know if the carbon that's going to be released from mining these wetlands is included in the provincial and the country's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Next up, we have Tess Prendergast from the Ontario NDP Party.
Thank you. Climate change is the greatest threat to our communities. Canada is warming twice as fast as other regions of the world, and how we respond will matter for our future generations. The Ontario NDP has a really bold, practical plan to address the climate crisis. It's called the Green New Democratic Deal, and it's a plan to retrofit public buildings with new skilled trades workers, and we want to reach net zero emissions by 2050. So just 5 years after the Green Party, not too shabby. And by doing this, we will provide over 100,000 jobs in the longevity of the program for millennials, for youth, for people looking to get retrained in the trades, to retrofit our buildings, and really to make our communities healthier and more stable for our future generations. We will also give a zero emissions vehicle strategy, which will ramp up electrical vehicle sales to hit our 100% target by the year 2035. And we'll be giving families incentives to buy electric vehicles, up to $10,000 on non-luxury vehicles. So that's under $100,000, folks. We'll also give you money to put an electrical vehicle charging station in your home, and mandate that all new houses built have the capability to put EV charging stations. So we're really trying to push towards the future and incorporate that with our jobs promotion and training promotion for individuals in Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you, Tess. Next up, we have Bob Gordonier from the Ontario Liberal Party. Bob.
Thank you. The Liberals, we feel that there is actually two crises in the world, and one being the climate crisis, of course, and the other one being the Ford crisis here in Ontario. We need rid of both. We would invest in $1 transit, which would be $1 per trip. So in other words, if you wanted to go from Orangeville to Brampton on the GO bus, it would be $1. If you wanted to go from Brampton to Southfields, it would be $1. That would take 400,000 cars off the road per day. Also, we would have a temporary moratorium on the gravel pits here in the riding, and we would totally stop the highway of 413, because that is nothing but a polluter as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Laura Campbell from the Green Party of Ontario, you'll have the first crack at our next question. Pre-pandemic, Ontario was moving towards a more progressive reform with home care seen as the first step in care, with hospitals and long-term care homes as the last resort. Will you and your party support and fully fund home and community care as a fundamental base of extended care?
Yes, that's definitely an important piece of the puzzle when we think about how we are going to care for our seniors. Ontario Greens believe that home care is definitely part of the solution. We want to increase funding to home care services by 20% so that people can safely stay in their homes longer. We want to create a standard basket of core home care services that providers must make consistently available across the province, so that this is an option not just in certain communities but across the province, because that should be an option. We also want to shift to entirely nonprofit home care providers within the public system. We know that in long-term care homes, the for-profit homes were the ones where we saw very devastating outcomes even before the pandemic. And so we have to make sure that we have really good regulations around that. We need to provide team coordinators as a single access point within family health teams to ensure that care is consistent with patient needs. So it's not just about creating the home care, but making sure that the patients have that connection with their health team. We want to mandate that personal support workers are paid a minimum of $25 an hour, especially if they're traveling between different places. One of the staff at my restaurant, it was a home care personal support worker in Ottawa, and she said that the cost of the travel really made it difficult for her because her wage was so low. We want to increase high-quality home care options for those experiencing early dementia. So I met with folks from the Alzheimer's Society, and this is something that they really need. They need more funding to make sure that people who are perhaps in early stages of dementia get the support they need, and that their families have that support too. So yeah, this is important.
Thank you, Laura. Next up, we have Andrea Banier from the New Blue Party. Andrea.
I think it is important to support home care workers, any private worker, anybody who's got a position that needs to drive and basically they're self-employed. You know, one thing that we can do is really focus on the cost of living. And the new blueprint with the New Blue Party, we do focus on fixing the cost of living immediately. We'll cut the carbon tax, which would take off 10 cents immediately from the provincial gas tax, and fight the federal carbon tax, which was botched in courts. And there'd be another 3% reduction on gas from cutting the HST from 13% to 10%. I'm talking about these because it's important to talk about the cost of living for anybody who is self-employed. And there needs to be immediate measures that will help people now the relief they need to get through these difficult times. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Next up, we have Tess Prendergast from the Ontario NDP Party. Tess.
Hi, thank you. The Ontario NDP believes strongly that Ontarians want to age in place in their homes for as long as possible. We need to fortify a robust home care, and that starts with ensuring that our workers have full-time jobs with benefits so they can be proud of the work they're doing. And let's face it, PSWs, we value them. We know how indispensable they are after the pandemic. They weren't respected. Many had to work 2 to 3 part-time jobs at different home facilities, long-term care facilities that were privately owned. They weren't treated well, and retention of employees fell through the cracks because they weren't paid well and they were subject to some of the worst working conditions that I think any Ontarians have seen in the last 4 years. So it starts with respecting our workers in place. They're taking care of our elders, and we need to treat them with decency. So we will increase their wages by $5 an hour to start, and we will ensure that they have full-time, good-paying jobs so they can live and work in their communities. I met a young woman who's providing home care to my father, actually. She had to work in 2 cities. She had to work in Fergus and in Orangeville just to make ends meet, and that is not acceptable. I know Mrs. Jones is saying that we're creating a lot of jobs, but are these full-time jobs with benefits that people actually want? That's the question. So for home care, just similar to the Greens, we'll offer a bouquet of services which residents would be entitled to receive, like meal preparation, nursing care, or medication management. We just want to make sure that we can offer culturally sensitive home care as well, so people can stay at home as long as possible and as long as it's safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Tess. Next up, we have Bob Gordonier from the Ontario Liberal Party.
Thanks very much. There's no doubt that home care to our seniors and others is a huge, just a huge benefit to them to be able to stay in their own home. But it's hard to attract people at the wages that these for-profit organizations pay. So I'm totally in favor of home care, but not for profit, and we need to increase their salaries. The Liberal Party will help 400,000 more seniors get home care with a $2 billion annual investment by 2026. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Next up, we have Sylvia Jones from the PC Party of Ontario. Sylvia.
Thank you. I'm going to speak to two programs that specifically reference and tie back to the question about expanding home care, allowing home care. So in Dufferin County, the Dufferin County paramedics were a pilot project for over 10 years. It is called Community Paramedics, and it is literally where paramedics visit homes that have either individuals who have reoccurring issues that perhaps send them to the emergency department over a period of time. The program ensures that paramedics visit those homes and those families and work directly with that patient. As I said, it was a pilot project for almost 10 years, hugely successful. Anybody who used it was so thankful to Tom Reed and his team for doing the excellent work in community that allowed people to stay in their homes. I'm proud to say that under our government, the Minister of Health has expanded that program now province-wide. So everywhere across Ontario, you have community paramedics working with families to keep people in their homes longer and not bouncing back and forth to emergency rooms. The second one was an announcement I made in the first year of our government's term in 2018. And that was an announcement that an Ontario health team would be formed here in Headwaters region. Seeing paramedics, doctors, nurses, physiotherapists, personal support workers, all in the room together and saying, finally, we are going to be able to talk directly to each other, as opposed to saying to our patient, your condition has improved or worsened, you need to go talk to your family physician. That's not going to happen under an Ontario Health Team, because when that PSW sees a change, they can go direct to the family doctor and make the changes necessary.
Thank you, Sylvia. Our next question, Andrea Banier from the New Blue Party, you'll get first crack. I didn't write this one, but I certainly could have. Well over a year ago, many municipalities actively supported internet service providers' grant applications to both the federal and provincial government to bring high-speed internet to some of the worst-served communities in southern Ontario, including Dufferin County. Apart from swift rollouts and announcements, there has been total radio silence about the fate of these grant applications. What will you do to expedite processing these applications?
I'm smiling because I have 2 megabits per second internet at home, and I have been trying since I moved into my house in Mono to get faster internet, and it is impossible. We contacted every single service provider there was, tried to build a tower. I am well aware of how difficult it is to get high-speed internet. From my personal experience, and even talking to some of the companies that we have here in Dufferin-Caledon who did get these grants, there is a lot of red tape involved, but also it's not even going to answer the questions. I mean, my driveway is 400 feet off of the road, so even if they did put fiber lines up to the end of the driveway, I'd have to pay to get it to my house. So realistically, there is no solution right now from the provincial government or municipalities. Realistically, the only option is Starlink. And I've also been waiting on that wait list for a year and a half now, and they haven't. There's no way to contact them. So if I was elected as MPP, I think that would be one of the first things I do is find a contact information from Starlink and figure out what is the problem with getting it to our communities, because it just doesn't realistically seem that there is any other option at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Next up, we have Tess Prendergast from the Ontario NDP Party. Tess.
Thank you. So currently we have an Ontario government that's mandating online learning for high school students. Whereas I taught grade 6 last year, and I had 3 students who lived in Grand Valley who had unreliable internet service. So it's a bit hypocritical, if I can say so. High-speed broadband internet has not been a priority for the last 2 consecutive governments in Dufferin-Caledon, rural and northern Ontario. The NDP government is guaranteeing that on or by 2025, we will deliver this service this essential service to Ontarians. I spoke to a farmer who had to drive 25 minutes to Tim Hortons to download essential software updates for his farming equipment. So that's taking 40, 50 minutes out of his day to do that, and how often does that have to happen? And back to my grade 6s last year, they were missing out on school. You know, we had these unreasonable expectations placed on our children and family to attend school online without the tools to do so. I was once told if my internet didn't work, I could drive to my school's parking lot and sit there and deliver lessons. Is that reasonable in our day and age? I don't think so. Thank you.
Thank you, Tess. Next up, we have Bob Gordonier from the Ontario Liberal Party. Bob.
Thank you. Well, there's no doubt that this is definitely a problem. If you're trying to run any kind of a business today, you certainly need high-speed internet. And you need a reliable source of it. And it just doesn't seem to be there. I don't know actually who is in control of this as far as getting it done, but you can't run a farm in anywhere without feed rations, communications, sales. We can go on forever. And we've talked to lots of teachers, online learning. It was, the Ford government says it's just the greatest thing since sliced bread, but I haven't heard anything from teachers saying the same thing. And the online learning, I believe, was a disaster. Ask the students, ask the teachers. I think it's pretty straight up. But you cannot run a business today without high-speed internet. So I believe we need to put somebody on this and get it done.
Thank you, Bob. Sylvia Jones from the Ontario PC Party, over to you.
Thanks for the question. So without a doubt, I think we're all in agreement that reliable broadband is and should be a priority. Our government has made it a priority. We have said that by 2025, every region across Ontario will have reliable broadband. I'm going to give a very specific example because we're here in the center of Dufferin County. About 2 months ago, Bell announced that they had completed a broadband expansion in Mansfield, including Mansfield Community and Mulmer. We've seen the wires being installed, but it's not all fiber optics. There are other options. Pekanjikam in Northern Ontario is a fly-in community. They have broadband because the program that was put in place, working with the federal government and the provincial government and the community, was actually the low orbit Earth orbit satellites. That community has now got broadband. So incredible moves forward. You know, you will often hear me talk about how I am a big fan of leveraging federal, provincial, and municipal dollars. I've said it for many, many years. I believe in it. Unfortunately, this is one example where, as the province puts together the proposals and sends them into the federal government, we need a little more faster turnaround from the feds to make sure that we can get these projects out, because as we all know, there is limited building opportunities, limited windows over the course of a year, so we need to make sure that those approvals come faster. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. I apologize for that music. Hopefully they couldn't hear it at home. Next up, we have Laura Campbell from the Ontario Greens.
Yeah, I'll just repeat and say, of course, we're all in agreement that internet is so crucial in 2022 as we increasingly work from home and as we need more reliable internet for advanced farm equipment. Ontario Greens have made that a priority. It's part of our platform to make broadband internet an essential service for the people of Ontario, and so that we roll out high-speed internet across the province. And so the way in which we can do that is by working with municipalities and making sure that they're not burdened with waiting for really long amounts of time for, different grants and supports to come through. We also need to incentivize the market. We don't want another situation where we have two major corporations that essentially have a monopoly on these services. We need to level the playing field for smaller providers so that folks have more choices for internet for their homes. So I think if we bring in more providers and we set a target and a goal to get this as an essential service for all of the people of Ontario, we can get that done. And we can also get that done by working across party lines and making sure we're not, voting against one another in Parliament when there's key pieces of legislation around expanding access to internet that might be buried in a bill somewhere, and we're just voting against it because the other party introduced it. Let's work together to get this done.
Thank you, Laura. Tess Prendergast from the Ontario NDP Party, you'll have the first crack at the next question. Farmland across Dufferin County produces a lot of our food, but farmland also provides habitat for pollinators, areas to replenish our groundwater resources, and an opportunity to encourage even more carbon sequestration. What programs has your party promoted in the past, and what will you do going forward to assist Dufferin farmers to bolster the ecosystem of goods and services already generated across Dufferin's farm landscape?
Okay, thank you for the question. We will first stop with the paving over of farmland. So we're just going to leave that as it is. We will instate an agricultural impact assessment. So anytime that farmland or agricultural lands are purchased, they will undergo a separate assessment with our government. They will be evaluated by a panel of agricultural and farming leaders. And these lands will be looked at. If they are able to be developed, how could they contribute to that industry? We will also support farmers and agricultural workers through green initiatives, through the new Green Democratic Deal. We recognize the importance of pollinators, butterflies, bees, hummingbirds, and we want to nurture them as they migrate through our great areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Tess. Next up, we have Bob Gordonier from the Ontario Liberal Party.
Thanks very much. So I guess the first thing is that we need to keep our farmland simply for these reasons, and the paving over of them certainly doesn't help anybody here. We have to develop new programs to educate farmers, and farmers love taking new programs to learn. We're very good at it. We're very flexible. We do know the advantage of having this at our fingertips, and to me, it's just a way of it makes it sustainable. That's of course the big buzzword today is sustainable. Well, farmers are very good at that simply because your families maybe farmed on that land for 3 or 4 generations. Well, that makes it fairly sustainable as far as I'm concerned. So we just need to keep watching and making sure that our farmlands are being kept, and also helping flooding, which cost millions of dollars in taxpayers' pockets. So to me, it's farmers are very flexible. They know what they're doing, and they love learning new things.
Thank you, Bob. Sylvia Jones from the Ontario PC Party, you're up next.
Thanks, Doug. So a couple of things. I mentioned previously over 80% of the landmass within Caledon is protected through the Niagara Escarpment Commission, the Oak Ridges Marine, the Greenbelt, of course. There are 5 conservation authorities that operate within Dufferin County. So there are lots of protections that are in place today. I must say that the Progressive Conservative government has not touched the Greenbelt once. The previous government removed land from the Greenbelt 17 separate occasions. So if we're talking about sustainability, if we're talking about protecting our land, our agricultural land, then let's look at what we have done, our actions, and let's look at what previous governments have done. I was struck a couple of weeks ago, the Canadian census came out. Agricultural production land in Ontario has actually increased by 30,000 acres in since 2016. That is a good news story. That is something that we should celebrate and we should acknowledge. Our farmers are doing an incredible job of working within the challenges of higher fertilizer, higher diesel, higher gas prices. We'll continue to support them to make sure that they can continue to operate and provide the local food that so many of us want as part of an Ontario model. But at the end of the day, what we have are some excellent protections, and we just have to make sure that we keep what is there in existence. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Next up, we have Laura Campbell from the Ontario Greens.
Okay. I want to say this very respectfully because I do appreciate that it was Conservatives of many years ago that did actually build the legislation to protect the Oak Ridges moraine and so on. But actually, the Greenbelt has been touched. There was an MZO approved in the town of Caledon on Greenbelt fingerlings for a 4 million square foot Amazon warehouse north of Old School Road in Dixie. So it is happening, sadly. It really is. And community activists have had to fight tooth and nail to protect the Greenbelt. The Ontario Green Party not only wants to, permanently protect prime farmland, but we also want to expand the Greenbelt by legislating a blue belt to protect the water as well. We're losing farmland at a rate of 175 acres a day. That's around 5 family farms a week, and that's devastating. And it is hard. All of my neighbors are farmers. Life as a farmer is hard, in particular small family farms. Ontario Greens are interested in making retaining family farms a real option for people. So we need to put in place a system that supports farmers so that they aren't forced to sell their land to developers. And so I just want to be very clear that protecting farmland it has to be the way forward. Our food security was really put at risk during the pandemic, and it shows us that, we need to not only shop local, but we need to eat local. And the only way we're going to do that is to freeze urban boundaries and to develop within those urban boundaries, not on the Greenbelt. And sadly, it is happening, and it's happening in very insidious ways by rezoning land, and we can't have that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Next up, we have Andrea Banier from the New Blue Party.
Laura's right. Life as a farmer is hard. I also am living next to farmers, and with the real estate prices these days, a lot of farmers are just putting up their farms for sale, and we're losing them in so many different ways. And I really think that we have to focus on the cost of living. We have to make the cost of living lower to keep farmers able to do their jobs. And one of those ways that the New Blue Party will do this is by cutting this carbon tax immediately, which will start saving people many cents off their gas. And for farmers, big tractors take a lot of gas. I also want to touch on the PC plan to cut the to lower the gas tax by 5.7 cents, and just mention that that plan is only in effect for 6 months. So it is really not a long-term strategy, and it sounds more like an election bribe, to be honest. So we really need to be focusing on long-term solutions to help people out with the cost of living now and going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. The next question will be directed at Bob Gordonier from the Ontario Liberal Party first. What specific actions will you take to reduce gender-based violence in this riding and across the province? And will your party support a provincial action plan to address gender-based violence that is comprehensive, intersectional, and well-funded?
Thank you. Well, I think that I always go back to education. I think that we need to be teaching this in the schools. I believe that it is definitely an issue. The police department have a hard time. I think the police department have a hard time probably looking after this, and we need special help in order to do that. I am all for supporting any education programs that would help in the long run here. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Sylvia Jones from the Ontario PC Party, over to you.
Yeah, thank you for this question. Gender-based violence is near and dear to my heart. I studied, along with MPP Laurie Scott, workplace harassment and violence that quickly expanded into human trafficking. We did that work when we were in opposition, and ultimately very proud of the fact that as a Minister of the Crown, I was able to introduce legislation specifically aimed at human trafficking. And it wasn't just based on the justice sector, giving more resources to the Crowns, to the police services who were dealing with this heinous crimes. It was actually multi-ministerial. So exactly talking to Bob's point, we now have education in our schools telling young people how and what to look for in terms of looking out for what human trafficking looks like. What does that, how do you protect yourself? And if you or someone that you know is being impacted, where do you go for help? We worked with the other ministries to make sure that we had programs and funding in place to help survivors, because it is a very, very challenging pathway back from someone who has been trafficked in human trafficking. We have seen some successes when the survivor-led organizations work directly with our police officers to make sure that as those survivors work through the system, they know what supports are available and they know what options are available. As I said, I am incredibly proud of the work that we've been doing with human trafficking.
Thank you, Sylvia. Laura Campbell from the Ontario Green Party, over to you.
Yeah, this is incredibly important. It's important to me personally because I have heard the stories as a teaching assistant over the course of 10 years at a university from students who were victims of sexual assault, and they did not have the supports that were needed even at a massive university. So even when we have the resources in place and we think we have the resources in place, I think we're still failing where it concerns gender-based violence. So we need to be doing much more. And I think the education piece is major, but also creating a safe environment where folks can go. And so it is also providing more funding to places like Family Transition Place and expanding places like that so that women or anyone has a place to go if they are victims of violence. The human trafficking piece is very important, and I commend the current government for putting in place that program. But we also need to ensure that we are providing, that we're really careful not to target sex workers. And when we make sure that those folks can work in dignity and aren't being targeted and perhaps by police in human trafficking cases. And so we really have to be very careful how we're doing that. So I'm sure that we can continue to improve upon the strategies that are already in place, while protecting the dignity of sex workers, to make it intersectional and to continue education around this. And of course, funding the places, the last resort places that families do sometimes have to go to when they are victims of gender-based violence.
Thank you, Laura. Andrea Banier from the New Blue Party, over to you.
This is a topic I have not done a lot of research on, but I really don't think that legislation is the answer here. What I do know is that the more that we implement identity-based policies in schools, the more it divides children. There's a lot of research coming out from the United States that they've been implementing what's called critical race theory, and it is further dividing children. And personally, I feel like we are taking the wrong approach to this, and our party is firmly against CRT. Personally, I feel like we need to be looking at other strategies like mindfulness and helping children, adults, vulnerable people at risk be able to be able to handle life situations and understand it from a different perspective other than life as being identity-based. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Tess Prendergast from the Ontario NDP Party, over to you.
Hi, thank you. I'd like to say that the Ontario NDP Party stands firmly behind 2SL LGBTQIA+ communities, and we support them. And we will create programs and policies to make sure that language is inclusive and they're represented in healthcare, long-term care, and education. Queer and trans youth in Caledon, and I've spoke to a couple of individuals, they don't feel supported and represented here. And sometimes gender-based violence can be committed against these groups of individuals. One of the first moves in 2018 of the Provincial Government Ministry of Education was to change the health and physical education curriculum. They changed when students learned about consent, what language was appropriate to use in certain grades. There was even a hotline that parents or other teachers could use to report teachers who were teaching things that weren't in this new health document. This was not created based on science or fact. It was created based on feedback from the populist base that voted for the Conservatives at the time. This overhaul of education actually worked against what we're working for in the system, is that to educate and provide appropriate language, compassion, and understanding for all of those that are in our society. And just to comment on critical race theory, ignoring systemic racism doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It is documented, it is true, and I take issue with that statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Tess. Sylvia Jones from the Ontario PC Party, you'll have the first crack at the next question. Supply chain issues have hampered business competitiveness throughout the pandemic. What actions would you take to ensure their resiliency?
Oh, this is an excellent question. So, as a result of the pandemic, we literally had bidding wars where planes filled with personal protective equipment, countries were bidding on what was in those airplanes because we had no domestic Ontario Canadian supply. One of the first things that the Premier did was a call out to Ontario businesses that said, if you can modify your business and make personal protective equipment, PPE, then we want to hear from you. And we all saw the stories. There's a great local supply of mask companies right here in Orangeville. As well as that, we were able to work with a local producer, and now in the province of Ontario, we are manufacturing personal protective equipment. What does that mean? It means that going forward, hospitals, long-term care facilities, paramedics have access to a local Ontario manufacturer. What does that mean? If, God forbid, we have another pandemic or another health crisis, it means we're not relying on foreign countries, foreign entities to say, we will give you X amount of supply. The amount of work that has happened through the Economic Development Ministry to make sure that those products, that manufacturing occurs here in Ontario is pretty easy to see when you realize how far afield we were going for some of our personal protective equipment. But I also look at the other side of it, which is we now have people employed in the province of Ontario making this manufactured personal protective equipment that we're going to need. And I'm very, very proud of that work.
Thank you, Sylvia. Next up, we'll hear from Laura Campbell from the Green Party of Ontario. Laura.
Yeah, insulating our supply chains is crucial, and I agree with what Sylvia's saying here. There is a lot of work that goes into making sure that our supply chains are stable. But yeah, moving towards more products being made in Ontario and being able to source them here, that has to be the way forward. Not just because we have to make sure that the things that we need are available when we need them, but also because it just makes sense from a climate perspective. We are getting things coming coming to us from the other side of the world, and it's unreliable for sure. It's also has a huge carbon footprint. So Ontario Greens would support other parties in any work that they're trying to do to not only protect our supply chain, but to make sure that we are getting many things from this province. So again, it's about working together to put in place these solutions and not battling each other at Queen's Park. So yeah, protecting our supply chains is 100% something Greens are very passionate about. We're all about sourcing things in Ontario and creating the jobs here so that we can get things locally. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Andrea Banier from the New Blue Party, over to you.
I'm going to take this time to share my story. My small business pivoted when the pandemic hit, and we started supplying PPE because I had contacts in China. And I will sum it up by saying that we dealt with a lot of government corruption. And I was left with 2 containers full of PPE, about 600,000 units, in a Brampton rail yard, and the provincial government would not take it after sending it for testing. Now I jumped through all the hoops. I worked 20-hour days, every single day straight. I dealt with so many people within the government. This is the reason why I'm in politics, because I saw so much incompetence. And to talk about the companies that are now making PPE in Ontario, I actually did start manufacturing masks in Ontario, but I only did it because I had to start a wholesale business to make the money back from what I brought in thinking I was helping with the pandemic. And it's very hard to start a business. It's very hard to start a wholesale business. It's very hard to start up manufacturing without any help. There was never any intention from this provincial government to help small businesses. Instead, all of the grant funding went to large corporations. I think it was $230 million went to 3M to start making masks. That's not even a Canadian company. So there were a lot of problems. There's a lot of things that I can talk about when it comes to the manufacturing here in Ontario. But I would like to say that we need to start focusing on small businesses, not large corporations, not giving the grant funding to the large corporations or forcing small businesses to come together with other ones, which was another one of the grant programs that happened. I wrote a lot of business plans. I gave a lot of contacts over, and I did not get any help or support. And there's a major problem, and there's a major perception problem here, and I'm out of time, but that's all I'll say for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Tess Prendergast from the Ontario NDP Party, over to you.
Hi, thank you. I'm going to speak to our platform, By Ontario, for Ontario, which will help communities benefit. Ontario workers make some of the best products in the world. Hundreds of thousands of families rely on the jobs that make these products here in Ontario. New Democrats believe that rather than send public money and jobs overseas, government should reinvest tax dollars back into Ontario communities. We will create and protect Ontario jobs and build prosperity by supporting Made in Ontario products. From small and medium-sized businesses and manufacturers, and supporting a strong local supply chain, we'll make sure communities, especially those that have often lost out, benefit from large infrastructure projects. So we will buy Ontario through government procurement. We'll engage in strategic government procurement from small and medium-sized businesses and nonprofits. We'll ensure that our small businesses can compete with big industry and use taxpayer dollars to invest in good jobs right here in Ontario. Our Buy Ontario program will also include a social procurement policy to support diverse vendors. We support Ontario workers, and we support the supply chain starting here. Thank you.
Thank you, Tess. Bob Gordonier, over to you.
Thank you. Well, there's no doubt this is a different world. And if you're the end user, you can quite often find yourself in a lot of trouble. Talk to contractors. Something pretty silly, but we ordered a new bathtub. Well, they told me it was 9 months to come. And we thought, well, that's certainly different, but I think everything that we're looking at here that is made outside of Canada has been something very difficult to buy. We've got $100,000 water pumps sitting for a $9. You can't use them because they need a $9 seal in them. and that seal comes from someplace else. So I think the secret to this is it's made in Ontario, and it might cost a little bit more money because of wages here, but I believe we could get by quite well by looking at made in Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Laura Campbell, you'll have your first crack at what will be our last question.
Okay.
And we're asking you to keep your answer to a minute or less, even though it's a very important topic. In light of the recent pandemic, how do you and your party plan to support long-term care facilities in our riding after the election?
This is very important. One of the key pieces of the Ontario Greens platform is about respecting people. It's about building a caring economy. So one of the things that we need to do, as we've already talked about, is create more home care options. And we also need to ensure that our long-term care homes have the ones that are in-person homes. We need to have inspections that are regular and that that we're regulating these places a lot better than we have. And we also need to respect the workers that are there. Personal support workers are incredibly underpaid. We've talked about this already this evening. We need to support these folks. Ontario Greens want to build more long-term care beds and make sure that the people who are staffing them are well paid. And we need to ensure that we have that funding in place. And we do that by repealing Bill 124.
Thank you, Laura. Andrea Banier, over to you.
During the beginning of the pandemic, when I was supplying PPE, we ended up supplying it to long-term care homes. So I worked very closely with many of them. And I know that there are problems with some long-term care homes, but we're ignoring that there weren't with a lot of other private ones. And most of the problems that I found while dealing with the owners of these private long-term care homes was not having support from the government. And the programs were very difficult. It was hard to get money. There was no oversight. So really, I think that there needs to be a total overhaul of how support works for the private versus public long-term care homes, not get rid of them, but we need to look at how to support them better and make sure the support comes faster. Also, of course, we need to get rid of the vaccine mandates and hire back these healthcare workers who are waiting for jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Tess Pendergrast, over to you.
Thank you. Over 4,000 vulnerable seniors died in Ontario long-term care homes during the pandemic. There are over 58% of long-term care facilities are privately owned. The NDP's cornerstone of our platform is to make the entire long-term care sector public and not-for-profit. There will be no profit in care. We will only focus on quality care for our vulnerable seniors. We will make family members part of the care team, so they will never again be refused access to their loved ones like they were, saying goodbye on FaceTime. We will make sure that our seniors get to spend their final days in dignity with adequate care, at least 4 hours of care per resident immediately. We will raise the wage of PSWs by $5 an hour to start, and we will guarantee full-time, good-paying jobs to treat workers and residents with respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Tess. Bob Gordonier, over to you.
Thank you. The Doug Ford government haven't only let seniors down, they have made things worse by allowing for-profit corporations to put our seniors in big box warehouses and eliminating any meaningful oversight. In the past year, we have seen elders suffer in horrifying conditions to the point that our military had to be called in. This heartbreaking memory should not be allowed to fade. We will end for-profit long-term care with a target of 2028. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Sylvia Jones, over to you.
Thank you. There is no doubt that the pandemic was most impactful for our seniors and our elderly. And this speaks directly to what I talked about at the very beginning with my opening statement. When governments refuse or ignore and don't plan for the future, we run into problems. It was very obvious, very early on, that having 4 beds in a long-term care facility room was going to cause a problem. We are now building 30,000 long-term care beds across Ontario, including announcements here in Shelburne and right here in Orangeville. Those beds have been announced. They are being built. I can't underline how important it is. If governments do not plan, then we have problems. And frankly, the pandemic showed very clearly that we were not ready, and the previous government did not plan.
Thank you, Sylvia. We're going to move to closing statements, and I'm going to remind the candidates you have a maximum of 2 minutes. We'll continue on with our speaking order. So Andrea Banier from the New Blue Party, you'll go first.
I would just like to thank the Dufferin Board of Trade for inviting me to this debate first. I know that our party has faced some media backlash and our leader was excluded from the leadership debates. So I just want to say all of Dufferin-Caledon and all the media here has been very kind and they have reached out to me. This is my first debate. I'm new in politics. So thank you all for your support. There's a lot of people that I've been speaking to going door to door here. And I have talked about a few of the New Blue Party's points tonight, but I encourage you to go and check out our entire platform at newblueparty.com newblueontario.com. And I'm just going to end this and conclude this with, again, talking about the vaccine mandates, because it is the big elephant in the room and nobody is talking about it and no political parties are. And realistically, we don't know what's coming in the future, but that it is something that we need to deal with. It's not over yet. And the MPP, Sylvia Jones over here, I have to bring this up again, her position in this PC government put in place certain legislation that now makes emergency powers permanent in the future for protesters, which infringes on democracy. And our party is very big on dealing with political corruption and bringing responsibility back. And I just want to say, I'm just going to end it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Tess Prendergast from the Ontario NDP Party, your closing comments, please.
Thank you. I often get asked, why are you running? Well, I'm running for everyday families like mine. I often think about my children's future and what Ontario is going to look like in 20 years' time. Will they still be living in my basement? Question mark. I think about my aging parents, and will they be able to find safe, quality care that they can afford in a community that they actually want to live in? I worry that the current government is setting Ontario up for failure. Our natural environment, farmlands, wetlands, greenbelt, they're all under threat. Services for children with autism are under threat. That wait list has 50,000 names on it, and it is unacceptable. Public education, our healthcare system are eroding. They are crumbling right before our eyes, and we need to do something. This is a tipping point. I'm telling you this as a frontline education worker. The missing middle is also in education. And we're going to be missing a whole group of children who are not receiving the education that they should be entitled to, with an average of 6 minutes spent per child for one-on-one support, with class sizes maxing at about 30 to 32 kids in some schools. We need to really invest in our services. We need sizable investments in healthcare and education, affordable housing, affordability of everyday life. And the NDP is the party that can give that to you. We are the opposition party in Ontario. We hold 40 seats right now. We are the clear path to progress for Ontario, and we hope that you'll give us a chance. Flip-flop between red and blue has only gotten us so far. Let's try a progressive approach for Ontario. Vote orange on June 2nd. And thank you, Dufferin Board of Trade, for your time, and thank you everyone at home for watching today.
Thank you, Tess. Bob Gordonier from the Ontario Liberal Party, your closing comments, please.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much to the group that has hosted this evening, and Doug for moderating it. We have a choice to make in Dufferin-Caledon. We can choose environmental destruction or a government that will finally put a stop to it. We can choose more cuts to health care and education, or a government that will reverse it. There are 4 progressive parties here that have a very similar vision of the province, and one MPP that is set out to change the face of our riding. We cannot split the vote and let Sylvia Jones get a free ride for another 4 years. With all due respect, no other party can form government except the Liberal Party. So on June the 2nd, I'm asking for your vote for a better Dufferin-Caledon.
Thank you, Bob. Sylvia Jones from the Ontario PC Party. Your closing comments, please.
Thanks, Doug. To the Dufferin Board of Trade, the Dufferin Federation of Agriculture, the CFUW, and of course Rogers Cable, thank you for hosting tonight's event. I have to say that I have very much enjoyed the respectful tone of today's debate. We had 11 different questions from a wide range of issues. I hope that you saw some differences and could make some determinations. I have served the people of Dufferin-Caledon for many years. It has been a great honor. I hope that in today's debate you saw some of the things that we have done progressively in the last 4 years, and some of the things that we are going to do in the next 4 years to get it done. At the end of the day, I am representing the people of Dufferin-Caledon at Queen's Park. It is a great joy. I love talking to people at the door, in meetings, and I want to continue serving the people of Dufferin-Caledon. So on June 2nd, please vote for me, Sylvia Jones.
Thank you, Sylvia. Laura Campbell from the Ontario Green Party, your closing comments, please.
Yeah, thank you again to the Dufferin Board of Trade for hosting. It's been fantastic. And thank you to everyone here for standing up for what you believe in and representing the ideas and policies of your party. And I said this in 2018, and I will say it again. We are all here because we want to serve the people of this community. We're all here because we believe in public service and we want to solve the problems. The thing is, we haven't been solving them. We keep hearing the same promises from the old line parties that they will address these issues and they will make these changes, and they're not happening. And I don't think it's because they're not trying. I think it's because they don't have the confidence of their colleagues. One of the things that I have seen through Mike Schreiner's leadership of the Ontario Green Party is his capacity to work across party lines. So that means that if we have a minority government, which might happen, we might have a minority government, we are going to need to work together to solve these problems. We cannot just be fighting each other constantly. So, I, as a representative for our community, would work across party lines at Queen's Park to make sure we're getting these things done. We have new solutions to these old problems. We want to build homes, not highways. One thing we didn't talk about tonight was mental health. The Ontario Greens are the first party in Ontario's history that has a standalone mental health platform that is addressing the wait lists of children seeking mental health care, exactly like same situation in autism. We need to bring people along. I would work across party lines and make sure we're getting this stuff done. So thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me or find me working in my restaurant, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Laura. We'll close with thanking our partners who helped us do this tonight: Brampton Real Estate Board, Canadian Federation of University Women Headwaters, the Dufferin Federation of Agriculture, and Rogers TV Orangeville, as well as all the folks who work behind the scenes to make it happen. Rogers TV Staff Producer Director Todd Collison, Rogers TV Broadcast Technician Eric Frotton, as well as Board of Trade Executive Director Diana Morris. Thank you. As a reminder, candidates' bios and information can be found on our website, www.dufferinbot.ca, and please get out and vote on June 2nd. Thank you. About 20 seconds.
My name is Lily Nguyen, and I'm your Ontario Party candidate for Dufferin-Caledon. I'm not a politician. I'm an everyday person, just like you. When my voice wasn't being heard by politicians who told me and other Canadians to stay masked up and locked up in their homes, while these elites themselves didn't have to comply to their own rules, I decided that an everyday kind of person needed to unseat the incumbent. We are in extraordinary times, and this is not a normal election. The Ontario Party and myself are fighting against tyranny and communist globalism, against digital IDs and WHO treaties that Mr. Trudeau wants to put Canada under, to put it lightly. I'm speaking to you, dear Canadian, who have been censored, told you're a conspiracy theorist, and ignored when you tried to voice your concern that the government-enforced shutdowns and mandates were more detrimental to our communities and human flourishing than a virus with a more than 99.9% survival rate. Don't let anyone tell you that your concerns are invalid and that you're putting public health at risk because what you say is against the mainstream narrative. You're intelligent, and your voice should be heard. I'm with you, and that's why I'm here. Vote Ontario Party June 2nd, 2022, and let's fight for freedom, family, and faith.